Greetings, Mark Garang here, publisher of The Sun, and today joining me is Paul DegliAngeli, known as Paul D, and he's the former deputy town manager and engineer for decades, and our intrepid reporter, Damon Steer.
Hi.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you. And yourself?
Good. Okay, so this is Paul's. We gave him a special guest commemorative mug because it's a retirement mug. And so you've retired as of what, last month, September?
I just finished 3 weeks, so I'm starting my 4th week of
And you just got back from Paris, I understand? And
No.
No, okay. Okay. So we're going to talk about, what you really think is going on at Town Hall in the town. But first, let's just do a little Wayback Machine.
Alrighty.
So you started, when did you start? Like 2000?
Like 92.
92.
33 years ago.
Okay, so you were in the class with Earl. Were you before Earl Sires?
I was. Yep.
So
when you bump into Earl sometime, tell him about that because I hired Earl.
You hired Earl.
I did, yeah.
Everybody takes credit for it. Just ask Jack Cuddy.
Yeah.
So you came in, so you were first.
Jim Somerville. Do you remember Jim Somerville?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So Jim was hired by the Board of Selectmen back when we had a 3-member board.
Town manager. He was town manager.
He was town manager, yeah. The 3-member board was Ray Levitt, Jack Cuddy, and Cindy Briggs. And they knew that town was changing rapidly, and at the time they felt that Town Hall wasn't up to the challenge. And so they hired Jim to change things up. And I was his first hire.
Okay, because Jim was he was took no prisoners type of guy.
Yep.
Like he was a budget cutter, and that was that ilk. So 33 years ago was, do the math. When was that? Like 90? Oh, what did you say? 92.
92.
Right. So that was, we were just coming, because the paper started in '89. Started in recession was 90-91. The banks went bust. It was not a good time.
Right.
And the town budget was challenged too.
Yep.
All right. So he's out. So then it was you, and then.
Yeah, so I was interim town manager for not quite 4 months.
Oh, okay.
And then, as I said, we found Earl, and Earl was with us a good long time, did a great job. And then Tom Holmes.
But Tom Irving, the planner, when did he come in?
Tom Irving was hired by Jim, and when Tom started, Jim was already gone.
Okay, so between you, Tom, and Earl, you guys lasted 30 years.
Yeah.
And kind of like an all-star town hall, don't you think?
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is no knock on the people who are there.
Yeah.
Ryan, we have very qualified people.
Yeah, I think Ryan is going to do a great job for the town.
And the engineer?
Jim Badera.
Yep.
Yeah, Jim seems very, very well suited to the job, because the job isn't the job I held. Right, things change.
Right.
And so I was wearing many hats, and was able to do it. And but things just got busier and busier. So Jim is slotted into the engineer's position, but he has a role that I didn't have, which is assisting the building department, because things are getting more complicated, and there's more challenges, to what the inspectors say. Jim has a background being a housing commissioner and other, for other municipalities, and a lot of building experience as well. So.
All right, so you got a good crew. And
I think so. I think the 2nd floor town hall, is in great hands. Of course, Holly Whitelaw is still there, and she's been the backbone of the planning department. Between Tom Irving's leaving and us hiring Ryan, Ollie is the glue that held the planning and zoning board together.
No, very good administrator. And then John Eastman, I can't speak for John, but he's probably he's got a couple years to go or whatever it is, but he'll be getting retirement years too.
Yeah, he's, I think, 2 or 3 years, I think is what he's mentioned to me. Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be another change.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah.
So time goes on. All right.
Yeah.
So I know Damon's got a ton of questions, and we want to hit a bunch of topics. But the one thing I want to ask you first, going back into history, what was your first one? Was the first engineering project the Conway Lake Dam?
It was the bridge over the dam.
The bridge?
Yeah, the bridge and spillway. The Army Corps of, well, first of all, it was coming apart. And secondly, the Army Corps had years before done a report that showed that with the gates wide open, the dam, the opening over the bridge rather, was a restriction. And so you couldn't pass the required amount of water to avoid flooding for homes around the. So it was two things that needed to be done, you know. And so that was the first construction project. I remember one of your guest writers, a guy that went by the name of Cheyenne Hill. Yeah. Albert Hill, right. Of course, Jim, his brother, they grew up right there, and they owned that property at that time on the lake there on the cove. And he was critical. He'd done a piece, Town Hired the Wrong Guy, you know, of me.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, not a bridge guy, you know, which was true. I wasn't a bridge guy. But anyway, I invited him to the ribbon cutting, and I think we were fast friends ever since.
He was a great guy. I mean, he was a character.
For sure.
Certainly, people watching this, old timers, know him. And we used to have because we called them his dogs and hogs columns.
Yeah.
You know, and then he'd write his political columns, and we had that. We had a Cheyenne dictionary.
Yeah. Well, you needed it. Yeah. Both meaning and spelling.
Yeah.
But,
okay, Damon, go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I'll just go over some of the things that Paul is probably most famous for, which is roundabouts.
Oh, do you got a photo? We have a couple. Oh, go ahead.
Let's see, we have road standards, bridges, as previously mentioned, the bypass.
Well, let's just
South
start.
Road.
You can just start with one question. You don't have to.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I guess we got to go with roundabouts, because that's what
Alrighty.
you're probably most famous for. You're king of all roundabouts.
So the first time we started discussing roundabouts in town is really, this is a little known fact, that credit goes to Tom Irving. You know, he was trying to get the idea to catch fire, and for whatever reason, it just hadn't. And probably because he was doing sketches on Route 16 up the Strip, and nobody wanted to give up real estate for. But he had started the conversation in town hall. I had gone to France the summer of 2002 with my bicycle and followed the O2 Tour de France on my bike, and that's when I discovered roundabouts. I'd never seen them before. Like, these things work great. So once we built the north-south road, of course, immediately there was development pressure. And we knew that, you know, that portion, which was previously Mountain Valley Mall Boulevard, right, that was all going to be developable. And we knew that lights would just take the problem on the Strip and move it over to the north-south road. So the selectmen made it a policy that no traffic lights would be on the road. And boom, they started popping up. So the first ones were at Lowe's when they came in, and Hannaford, and then at Home Depot and Staples. And then the third one was when Walmart supersized. Walmart's driveway, which came out onto the north-south road at that time, was our highest accident intersection in town. And then the fourth, and you know, my final roundabout is the one at
What's the difference between a roundabout and a rotary?
Size. It's a good question, because when we were doing the first one, I was doing public, you know, informational sessions so people could be comfortable with it. And we did one at the old fire station in North Conway, you know, had the doors up and the fans were running. And there was an older fellow sitting up front, and he kept saying rotary, and I kept saying roundabout, and he kept saying, you know, same difference. And I said, well, I can see you've made up your mind, so I won't waste your time trying to explain it to you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to know the difference, right? And simply, with a bigger radius, like when you're down in Massachusetts, you can go faster. And so you're trying to get in when someone's coming at you at 45 miles an hour. In the tight radius, you can only do 15, 20, so it's easier to shuffle that deck of cards.
So is the Portsmouth, that's a rotary, down in Portsmouth?
Portsmouth, well,
The traffic circle?
Near Strawberry Bank, near the old.
No, I mean, when you get off 95. I mean,
yeah,
Spalding,
that's a rotary.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. That's old school.
And I was just telling Damon before we went on the air, is that this morning it was either in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal about how Keene, there's a big story about Keene and their rotaries. I mean,
Really?
yeah, and in roundabouts, excuse me. They have 7 of them. And the whole gist was about it saves, it's good for the environment.
Yeah.
You don't burn as much gas.
You're not sitting there just idling. And
Yeah.
Well, it moves traffic better. I mean, you know.
Fewer accidents too.
And it's a lot safer.
Yeah.
It's even safer than lights.
Yeah. Because you don't get T-boned.
You don't get T-boned,
It
right.
goes through the
Yeah.
red light.
You would have thought with the first one I was bringing about end of days. I expected any day that I came home to see this, burning effigy of me on the front lawn. But there wasn't anything that I've done here, negotiating with Conway and North Conway to combine into one sewage treatment plant, closing an old landfill building, wasn't anything I did that got so much positive feedback once it was in place. But leading up to it, people are resistant to change, and there was a lot of unhappy folks. My favorite ones was I was going through the supermarket, and the cashier said, "You're the town engineer, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Maybe." She goes, "That's great. I only had a half an hour to cash my check, and now I'm in and out and back, and it's all good, And then we were at Freiburg Fair, and there was a fellow who, was a woodsman, made his living in the woods logging. And same thing, he said, "You're the town engineer." I was like, "Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, I thought that was a bad idea, and I'm here to tell you I was wrong." And stuck out his hand, and he's like, "Those things work great."
Now, because the Conway Village intersection, the library into Four Corners is going to be done starting next year, right?
Yeah, I think Jim Badera at a recent selectmen's meeting, I'm retired now, so I don't know. But I think he announced that it's going out to bid in November.
Yeah.
So it's been approved by the state, and they're just pulling together their documents. So with the November advertising, it will be a spring start.
Okay, so
originally we
made
made
a dog bone, right? Wasn't there some?
No, that was an older version.
Yeah, so that he's right. So that project originated as a TIP application, a Transportation Enhancement Plan, the 10-year plan. They were just recently here, the Gasset hearing, Governor's Advisory Committee, and
I mean, for the Albany thing? No,
no,
I guess another
the
story.
Gasset hearings are statutory.
Okay.
So every 2 years there are these hearings where they collect input on proposed projects and which projects to pick and which projects to fund, and that's how they spend their money on the highways. And they're all ranked through the regional planning commissions. So the year that I put in the application for the roundabouts at what I call the Six Corners, right there, the two lights from Conway, it was the highest scoring project of the North Country Council. And it was picked and went right into the 10-year plan. So then we worked through the commissioner's office and said, DOT, and said, so here it is, it's in there. And we know it fits geometrically, but we know that the traffic volumes are similar to where we've built them elsewhere. But what we don't know is how it's going to actually work because of the proximity of the two intersections and all the things coming in, plus all of that commercial strip and all those driveways, which is Conway Village. So I propose that you break loose some money and we do the computer modeling like we did when we did the first two, and see what that looks like and see whether we still think this is the best idea or whether we should go back to lights and just improve the intersection. So they agreed. So they came up with the money, roughly $100,000. And we had two engineering firms, and we did two different modeling types, computer-based modeling, and ultimately decided that it wasn't the best use of the money to build the roundabouts. Instead, it would be better to update the lights, more modern lights.
Put that slip lane in.
Slip lane, reconfigure the geometry, add lanes.
Do you think that's going to make a big difference?
Well, it depends when you're talking about. So July and August in Freiburg Fair, it's not going to make a difference at all.
Because one of the things that...
That's why we have the bypass.
Exactly, and I want to talk about the bypass, and that's everybody's, us old-timers' favorite subject is that friggin' bypass.
Is he talking about, did he call me old? Is that what he just said?
Well, I'm putting myself in the older category. But the...
You're older than me, right?
I am. Yeah, just to rub it in.
Yeah.
But the...
Well, make
but
sure
what
get
I
that
was
in there.
thinking about, I know, but the theory is that if you get all the traffic through Conway Village, which is a mess, it's backed up to the Kank and all that, all it's going to do is, it's like squeezing the balloon. All the traffic's going to be backed up in front of Burger King now,
Right.
down the hill. What do you think? I mean,
I subscribe to that. Based on all of the traffic analysis you know, that I've had to do here every time a Walmart or a Home Depot or something comes in, or a new supermarket. All of what we went through with designing the bypass. Think about that. I spent 20 years working on that project.
Were you supporting the bypass? Did you support the bypass?
Oh yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
You
I
su-
mean,
even
Don
today?
Lyford, oh, did I support it? Did
Yeah,
I think
personally.
No.
No, okay.
Yeah, that's in the unplugged category.
Right, I know.
I never would have said it then.
Yeah.
But I never did, and I think it had the right outcome.
Yeah, because that was I mean, we don't have to go through it, but that was like, that would have gutted. There's only 20% of the traffic that was going around North Conway.
It made no sense. It really, you know, we had the opportunity to have lunch with Ray Burton, rest his soul, when his cancer came back. And so we had gone to lunch with him, and of course, Isaacson Steel had closed down.
In Berlin.
In Berlin, and the paper mills had closed
Right.
down. And the biomass plant doesn't pencil. Just, you know, talk to the folks at the Public Utilities Commission, and that's about, you know, that's going to go belly up.
Yeah.
They've put their hand out to Sununu while he was governor a number of times. And so at that lunch, you know, Ray said the bypass no longer makes any sense because those places are gone.
Right.
I would read between the lines and say it never made any sense. It was political pressure from those industrialists that
Yeah.
got it as far as it did, but it never made any sense.
Although Cindy Briggs, speaking of Cindy Briggs, she was a big proponent of it. I
Well-
mean, there were local people who were.
What came out of the bypass, you will remember that Chuck Leary was commissioner at the time.
Yeah.
And he had the famous quotation, "I will build the bypass without the north-south road, but I will not build the north-south road without the bypass," end quote. And what he was saying is, if you want this secondary circulatory road, which is what really made the difference, you will remember back in the day, it took you 45 minutes
Right.
to get from Burger King to Artist Falls Road. And then you still had to get through the village, you know. So turns out Chuck was wrong, because we did build the north-south road.
But that
not
was
the bypass.
a lot
But
of
the north-south road was a component of the bypass. So EPA,
Yes.
who had to give the permits, said, and because there was significant wetland impact and et cetera, they said, first, make all possible improvements to the existing infrastructure system. Then we'll hit the pause button for 3 years and study it, count the traffic. And then and only then, if it's still inadequate, then we'll allow the corridor to be built.
If the federal government ever worked, that was it. Now, part of those,
agree. Yeah.
and this goes back to the mid-2000s. Well, the bypass was what? I mean, the north-south road was like 2002.
Yep, that's when we
And
were.
then we did the improvements through North Conway, and this took over years, widening. People don't remember, but when you go down by Merlino's and
Yeah, the strip
Settlers,
got
that used to be one lane, and in front of Walmart, and that curve. And I can remember, even for me, not skeptic, I thought all those improvements worked, that if you put 2 lanes, how could 2 lanes at a traffic light really help going around the corner? But it does, the way it stacks up. It's
Well,
amazing.
it's. Do you remember high school physics? And
No,
would
I don't,
And
actually.
they would do that, like, you know, all the cars at the light, and when the light turned green, they don't all move at the same time. The first one moves, and then there's a lag time for the person behind goes, oh, he's moving, and then they move, and it propagates. So what the 2 lanes do is it reduces the queue, right? If you need to store 50 cars, instead of it being 50 cars long, it's 25 cars long, and then it's twice as fast because they start simultaneously and then they shuffle. And so a lot of people were skeptical about that. This will never work. It's going
Right.
to cause a problem. It worked just fine.
Yeah, it works great. And you get a little drag racing going around the corner at Walmart
There you
between
go.
the 2 lanes. But now,
So now that's what the lights in Conway are going to do. We're adding those lanes.
you're going to have 2
And
sweeping around
instead
north.
of it being you come to a stop and take a 90-degree hard left, it's a big radius turn. So when the light is green, they can flow through quicker.
Are you going to have the blinking yellows? What do you think about the long-term
I think they're
yellows?
great. I think it's moving more people.
Yeah.
It's like anything, people have to learn to use it. So you will remember, because you're uniquely located here on CV Street, when we opened the north-south road, it was like the demolition derby, right? Where accidents every other hour. And so we collected all of that police accident history and sorted it. And one of the things I sorted was, are they local people or visitors? And what's the age breakdown? And what did we find out? The majority of the accidents were local people, people who've lived their whole lives here and who were older. And they've been coming down the hill and not expecting to stop until they reach Route 16. And they just kept going right through the stop signs.
But we still get a ton of accidents out here in CV.
Oh, yeah.
You do, but when you start to look at why you get the accidents and break that down and say, would that accident have happened if it was configured this way, or if we had that, if we had this? And the answer is always no. It's not unsafe in its geometry, in its layout. It's just that people are going to do silly things, like the young girl who just rode her car into the covered bridge.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't want to debate that, but I think there's something different with the CV Street corner. When you just come up, even coming up from North Conway, the way it's laid out, it's just not obvious that there's a road, that the north-south road is there. And when you're coming down CV Street with the railroad stanchion there, it's just not clear. I think there's a visual distraction. I don't know why you just don't put, I realize you don't because it's supposed to be a limited access highway, just another set of stop sign out here.
Go
and in
four-way.
Grove Street, four-way.
Yeah.
I mean, getting out of Grove Street is awful, as you know. You take a
Right.
left. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Because we have the four-way at the end.
at Kearsarge, so why not just
Exactly.
people think that? And I know when because I'm here all the time, you know, people will, like I'm turning left here, coming north on North-South Road, and people will stop and let me in. Don't do that, you know, because then that's not the
It
rules.
mixes up the, right. And that's the other thing. I think that, you know, once you get your license, you have to repass the test every so many years. Because folks at intersections have forgotten the rules of the road. Who's
Well-
going through, you know, who's turning right, who's going through. It's a free-for-all.
Now, cynically, I'll say in the summertime, because we can look out the window and see all this traffic backed up, is that ironically, we're starting the infrastructure with the north-south road and all these roundabouts, it's starting to fill up. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we're going to be at capacity, or that's the question. Are we getting at a capacity again?
Yeah, we're getting close.
So then what? Like, one solution is the extended north-south road north.
So that's always been popular for
Yeah,
you.
I know.
You've always been a proponent of it, right? And of course, the Conservation Commission wasn't very happy with it, and you recall the bypass ended up going where it did, up by the hospital, because of the Abenaki encampment off of Innervale Crossroad, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. So you know, that would provide you another avenue, and then what, we would build a roundabout at Innervale Crossroad and Route 16, right?
Yeah.
Which we made application for a couple of years ago, but it wasn't highly scored. I still think that's a possible future.
Can you get through without gutting? If you were going to just map it out between here and Intervale, extending the north-south road, is that just literally would follow the rail line?
It could, yeah. That's pretty much what it would do. Yep.
I mean, is that much of a disruptor for Whitaker Woods? I guess it would be.
Well, it would be, yeah, and lots of folks were opposed to it. But yeah.
I mean, I would fix Kearsarge Road.
Yeah. How would the save it, don't pave it folks feel about having 3.5 times the pavement width?
I thought someone suggested to me that you could get through there without non-restricted land. In other words, don't go through Whitaker, but it doesn't seem like it. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah,
All right, Damon, what do you got?
All
What's your
right.
next question?
I was going to ask you about.
before
sorry.
that, but is there what would you suggest as a future solution for the road, for the bypass, for this traffic? Now, just one more, because everybody's favorite subject,
My
including mine.
answer to that is not popular.
But
right.
West Side Road.
No, the problem is population.
Oh, you and Bill Marvel.
Huh, that's interesting.
Well, you know, Bill would he would force an out-migration of half the population of
You know,
Conway.
it's, I mean, whether it's, you know, our fisheries or our air quality or
Too many
you know,
people.
or the food, we have limited resources. And I mean, look at Boston. I mean, look at these places. Atlanta. Ever been to Atlanta? It's like 7 lanes on the
Yeah.
highway. You know, what are you going to do? Make them 10 lanes, 9 lanes? It's just where our problem is.
All right, so assuming that, and that's a bigger issue, if you want to play God, but beyond that,
Probably not.
how would you, like, because one of the ideas was go up the West Side Road, put a bridge by Burger King across the river. I mean, there's been quite a few ideas. So what would be your next phase of improvements?
Are we saying that we're not going to build the bypass?
Yes, not the old bypass.
Okay. So, which means you're going to continue bringing everyone through town, but you need more lanes. So, I guess one option would be the state picked up the railroad and moved it. We spent all those dollars to move it, to preserve the corridor, to build the north-south road. So there's width there for more lanes.
On the north-south road.
Right. And then at the intersections, you know, you'd have straight through lefts or rights, you know, or you could do roundabouts there, right? And then ultimately you would have to continue it on all the way to Intervale.
Yeah.
Whether you go through Whitaker Woods or Kearsarge Road is what they call a rural route, one of the old star routes. Are you familiar with
No.
that? Do you remember that? Did you ever read Blue Highways?
No,
Yeah. Well, being a journalist.
I try not to read.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. So does my 15-year-old. But you can listen to it on tape.
Yeah,
Mark.
okay.
Yeah. So was it Tom Brokaw who wrote it, or Walter Cronkite?
I don't know.
Anyway, they got in their RV and he traveled across the country and he wrote a book about it, and he called it Blue Highways because on the atlases, right, the interstates, which only started getting constructed in this country in the late 50s, right? Can you remember Disney on Sunday nights and Goofy, and they were always, what they were doing is giving you lessons on how to use on and off ramps and come in and, you know, et cetera. So those are red. Prior to 95, there was US Route 1, Florida to Maine.
Right.
So that's a blue highway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they call it blue because it's.
And on the atlases, they showed up
there's
blue.
blue.
The interstates were red, and then
Okay.
the other ones were black.
Okay. Okay.
You know?
Okay. Okay.
So, anyway, so Kearsarge Road, where all the big Victorian the inns were, right? It's a village of inns, is the saying, right? In Kearsarge Lighting Precinct. That was the main route. That was where the carriages went way back in the day, right? And then the state started as a rural route. It's a 66-foot wide right-of-way.
Would you?
You could-
Peter Dono would probably have something to say about that.
Well, I'm sure he would.
Yeah.
Right. I understood that, and I wasn't there, and this is second hearing, but that at the Gassett hearing, he proposed that we continue the north-south road through Whitaker Woods up to Intervale for that
Well,
purpose.
he wanted some kind of fix to the traffic in Kearsarge.
Well, you were there. What,
yeah.
what did he say? I wasn't there.
Basically, he wanted some kind of fix. He didn't seem to specify anything in particular, but just do something.
Yeah, because I was surprised. I had some, since we're talking about that stuff, we had an email exchange with Peter. I thought he suggested we could go extend the north-south road.
That's what I understood. And that confused me because, again, that's kind of flies in the face of save it, don't
Right.
pave
When,
it.
when was the meeting?
A few weeks ago.
Did we cover that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we had a story
With the
about it.
Peter, okay, never mind.
Because was it at a regularly scheduled selectmen's meeting, or was it a separate meeting, the Gassett
It
hearing?
was at the Gassett meeting.
Yeah, okay.
All right, okay. good.
Anyway, I had a question about covered bridges. The one, the Saco covered bridge that just got hit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it time to put these covered bridges, you know, like off to the side and make them little, like rest stop areas, and then just put a regular bridge right there?
Oh gosh, you mean a parallel crossing?
Like you could.
All bridges need maintenance,
Right.
whether it's a brand new bridge or not. And they all need maintenance about every 25 years, and they all get replaced about every 100 years. So I would say that one is still functioning just fine. You know, that person would have hit the guardrail on a regular bridge, right?
But if you just had a regular bridge with 2 lanes, with you know, both
Yep.
ways, both direction of traffic, and you just stuck that covered bridge somewhere else, or made a different bridge, it seems like that would move traffic so much better.
Yeah,
than
but
having people stop
It's
and alternate.
space, you know, the bridge passed two-way traffic for years. We drove through it. I don't know when you got to town, but for years it was two-way traffic. It's just that the accident incidents were going up. Vehicles are bigger, people are going faster, people are driving more distracted, you know. So the state went one way because of the amount of damage the bridge was seeing.
People don't drive. You know, I'm a Berlin guy, and there's a bridge in Berlin Mills that's closed pedestrian traffic, that
Yep.
trestle bridge.
Yep.
Well, I grew up in that neighborhood.
Yep.
And so there would be a wood truck. I mean, I knew this. I used to drive with my parents. A wood truck and a car that would pass on that bridge.
Right.
You go up there now, you'd think you could barely get an SUV through it.
Right.
But people did it.
People did it all the time. We passed two at a time, all the time in that covered bridge here. But, you know, try to explain the person in the RV who doesn't know how tall they are and they keep hitting the,
Right.
you know, which is why they put those barriers at the Albany covered bridge up at
Yeah,
Passaconaway
that
and
big-
the Kink.
yeah.
Because people they just don't know. They rent an RV. They just assume it must be okay.
Hey, what's your favorite project over all these years?
Oh gosh, I'd like to think that the thing that I worked on that had the biggest impact would be the consolidation of Conway and North Conway into the one sewage treatment plant. Gary Chandler was superintendent of North Conway at that time. We worked together on that project and getting the funding for that project. The state DES did not want to fund the entire plant because they said it was bigger than North Conway precinct needed, and so they would only fund up to that. And we argued and were successful that it would be the sewage treatment plant of the Conways and Lower Bartlett because we need to protect the aquifer. And that argument won the day, and you know, we built the plant. And then
So
it
that
took
plant
18
just-
years.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It took 18 years from concept of consolidating Conway and North Conway to actually having sewage flow.
What was
I
that
worked
ab-
on that for 18 years.
What was it about all the Conways that, were, you know, why was the town so fragmented? I mean, maybe you don't have the answer.
You
to
mean
that, 'cause
about
it goes
the
back
Mason-Dixon
100 years.
line?
Yeah, like Conway, East Con, like it's gone away in the last few years, but I probably
Well, I think it's
my-
the oldest story there is, and it comes down to you know, economics. So Conway was a mill town, right, where you have the old Grindle building, right? You had a
Paintbrush factory.
right. You had a paintbrush factory. You had a toothpick factory, Diamond Lumber, right? You had people who were making wooden cones, spools for the shoe industry, for
Yeah.
the thread, right? You had Lucy Hardware, which is where Hammarina is now, across the street. You had the mill. There's still a sawdust pile in spots down there, you know. So it was a blue-collar town. North Conway, folks were getting off the train to go ski or go summer for vacation. And so it was, you know, it was very different, one municipality, but two very different communities.
Yeah, class. I mean, definitely class. And I've said this a couple times that Bill Marvel, and I may have this exactly wrong, but he still doesn't like North Conway because in the Civil War, there were 72 people or something like that. It came from Conway that participated in the Civil War. None of them were from North Conway. All South Conway and Conway Village, because the merchants up here could afford to pay for their kids not to go, you know, get mercenaries. So,
Yep.
so he's
Yep.
held the grudge for, you know, 250 years now,
Yeah. Well,
200 years.
you know, it'll probably die out, the grudge.
Do you think it's going to be, will there ever be more consolidated? And the plant, just to go back to that, so the North Conway, the sewage plant was built on Fernandez Way, right?
Yep,
That's
yep.
in back of,
Well, it's no longer, it's Sawmill Lane because Gene didn't want it named after him.
okay, but that's in
Yep.
back of where Sierra, the new Sierra place is, right?
Yep,
And that,
yep, it's that area.
yeah, and then the tie-in, even though this would be like your favorite project, only that an engineer would want, because it's not that sexy. Like most people saying, geez, Paul, really? Water? But they were separate, right? And it was only the two water systems and sewer systems, and it was tied only a few years ago,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
after all this time.
Yeah, after all this time. As I said, once we conceived of the idea and started, you know, doing the engineering and seeking the funding, it took 18 years. We actually connected the water before the sewer. But Conway Village, there was no sewage treatment plant in Conway Village. It was what's known as an activated sludge lagoon. Okay, so you dig holes in the ground and you dump all the septage which is different than sewage, right? Septic gets pumped out of your septic tank, and you dump it in there. Activated means there's air. There are pipes and blowers, and they pump air in there. You need air for the organisms to live so that they can then consume the waste for their food and therefore reduce its impact on the environment, right? Very low tech, activated sludge lagoon. There was a pipe from the lagoon then discharging water directly into the Saco River. And
What was the condition of that water?
well, it was, when I got here, we were exceeding the level, I worked for the town, right?
Right.
You remember, that was a separate quasi-municipal entity. It's a district, Conway Village Fire District, district size created by the statutes, right? And so it was a water, sewer, and fire district. And they were in exceedance of their permits. So when a developer came in and said, I want to build XYZ in Hobbs Street, which is an old industrial area but not used, the state wouldn't approve it because they'd have to hook up to their sewer, which would go to this lagoon, and then, you know,
Back into the
they
Saco.
they were already exceeding their limits. So anyway, we ended up
So is this, no, that system now, it's they call it a tertiary system?
tertiary, right?
So that's like the top of the top shelf system.
It is, yeah. In fact, there aren't many of them in New England. It's a barred and flow process, came out of Scandinavia. It's a biological process. There are live organisms. There's a colony of live organisms, and that's what, you know, consumes the waste. And tertiary meaning could be considered clean enough as drinking, you know, not that anybody would, but it's tertiary.
There's not a pipe that comes out of
And
it.
there's no pipe, and that's how we got we had a $7 million gap to getting the pipeline project done. And we were meeting with rural development, right? So you've got the Department of Agriculture, that's rural development. They fund through the Clean Drinking Water Act, they fund all the DESs and DEPs for drinking water versus federal highways goes to DOTs. So the administrator for the federal government for our region is in Vermont, in Montpelier. And at the time she had Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And, you know, she was saying, this doesn't pencil, so we need this money, and yeah, I know it's a good cause, but you know, and back and forth and back and forth. And I said, well, you know, who's on the committee? Who's, you know, Ways and Means? Who's, how do we? And so she connected us, and we were in a conversation, and he said, well, I said, we're going to take a pipe out of the river, you know, because we wanted to stop. And he goes, yeah, but you're just going to have another pipe somewhere else. You know, he had a great Midwestern accent, you know, and I was like, no, sir, no, we're not. You know, come again. Because of the glacier, right, that carved this valley, started at Mount Washington, ends, as I understand it, down by Nantucket in Long Island, right, that's the sand deposit. There is 33 feet of sand, what engineers like to call Adams soil, right? It's a very granular, well-drained beach sand, on top of the bedrock in the whole Saco River aquifer in that whole valley, that plain. So where this treatment plant sits, there's 33 feet of sand to bedrock. So we built depressions in the sand, lined them with, you know, 6-inch rock. And the tertiary, the treated water from that plant gets discharged into those basins, and it just goes through the ground. So unlike other sewage treatment plants, we have no sand filters inside because we naturally have them, and therefore there's also no pipe to the river.
So
Would this project
And because of that, and the opportunity to have photo ops with little kids and have those people pulling the pipe out of the river, we got the money. So then they sent up their, you know, media people and PR people, and we decided that they were going to do it all. Do you remember they closed the covered bridge in Conway? And we set up chairs, and the hounds was there to speak, and it was all this pomp and circumstance. And she was around, she goes, so where's the pipe? It's on its way. And I called up and said, you know, the guys at North Conway was like, I need like an 8-foot piece of SDR sewage pipe. And all of those suits from DC, they're Johnson and Murphy's, they were wet to their ankles. They were all clambering over each other to get in that photo holding that pipe out of the river. And that's where the last bit of funding came, which allowed us to actually connect
Huh.
the two.
So the water goes, just sinks in, right?
Sinks in.
And where does it go once it hits the
It
bedrock?
goes into the aquifer, the Saco aquifer.
So it goes back into the aquifer.
Yep, but it's already treated, right? And if you look at our outputs from the North Conway plant, it's very good.
What does that mean? Outputs. What do you mean outputs?
The water, if you're
You mean the
testing
quality.
the effluent from the plant, that which leaves
Doesn't
the
that
plant,
sand ever get contaminated after a while?
it doesn't, because the water has been cleaned. It would if it was otherwise.
All right. And so what percentage of the plant is now being used, the capacity?
That's a good question.
Do we care? Are we worried about we're going to use
No.
up all our water?
No, so that was the big argument when we wanted Conway to connect to North Conway. Well, we're going to give up our capacity, we're going to give up our capacity. That argument prevailed for 15 years. The North Conway Water Precinct contracted with no less than 3 separate engineering firms at 3 separate times to study that issue. And 3 times the answer always came back: there's more than enough capacity. But again, at these public hearings, and again at the old fire station, I said, you're going to have more capacity after they hook up. And Tim Anderson, you guys know Tim
Yeah, yeah.
Anderson, right? He's in the fire department. And he's never been shy about speaking in public.
Anything.
And Tim said, I just heard you say, blah, 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 you must be a magician, So I rolled up my sleeves, nothing up my sleeves, Tim. This was a state-of-the-art plant. And I said earlier in this program that there aren't many of these in New England. So the capacity given to us by permit, by DES, was based theoretically. Okay? So once we started operating the plant, a couple of good Berlin boys, right? We had Preventure come down and Dave Bernier.
Bernier,
Right.
yeah.
But Bernier was the superintendent and Preventure was the actual operator. He looked at me because, there's more capacity in that plant. I said, I know, because we only have 50% of the plant on. And we still only have 50% of the plant on.
Right now?
Yeah.
So that means there's another 50%?
Yes.
And we're not going to run out of water because the aquifer, we don't know, aquifer is the aquifer, but we're also recharging aquifer?
What goes back in?
Yeah.
Well, we are, but it's truly a drop in the bucket compared to what's going on in the valley. Although this summer tested things, driest summer in New Hampshire.
But that doesn't affect the aquifer. Does it?
Oh, it does. Yeah, groundwater. Why do people's wells go dry?
Right, but that's not, drill wells don't.
That's groundwater.
Right,
right.
but that's,
So the drill wells, they go into the bedrock.
right.
So because we have mountains, this hydrostatic pressure, so you drill a well and that casing is sealed into that rock, that water will rise way above ground level in your casing because of the potential from the mountains if it's groundwater.
But the aquifer's in the bedrock, right?
The aquifer will go through the bedrock, will go through there's a gravel pack down there, and it's really, think of it as an underground river, right? And so, we're in a much better situation than Arizona, Utah, Colorado, right? But still, climates are changing.
Where is our aquifer? Our aquifer is not connected to the one at Freiburg, right? What the Poland Spring is pulling the water out of?
It's the Saco River. So yes,
It is.
downstream. Yes, yeah.
But we're not going to go, they always worry about pulling up too much water in Freiburg,
Yep.
which, judging by the number of trucks that go out, I can see why they get concerned about that. But we're not going to run out of water here, right? How big is the aquifer?
Well, the aquifer is strong, but if you were up at Crawford Notch this summer and you looked at Saco Lake, Saco
Yes.
Pond, bone dry almost. So I think anything's possible. Who knows what'll happen with climate? We know that our climate on this planet over the millennia has changed, right, enough that there have been 4 total extinction events in our history of the planet, not us as people here. And I think we're pretty certain that there's going to be a 5th, but we're the first ones aware of it. So I never say never. We have plenty of water in the aquifer. It's crazy that people use so much bottled water. Years ago in the 80s, I was climbing in the Andes in Peru, and you could buy a Coca-Cola in a remote mountain town, but you couldn't get water, right? And then what do? Well, they bottled water and they brought that, as opposed to using their resources to help these folks build pumps and public and bring water to people. Well, that doesn't help their profit margin. The act of buying a bottle of plastic water when you could fill up a reusable container from, if you live in the valley, from your faucet, right? Which is the same water that Poland Springs is reselling to you.
Now, and I totally agree with that. I think you got to, the whole Poland Spring thing, the waste of bottled water, blah, blah, blah. But it also goes through pipes. Like when you go here and it's the same, it's
Well, here in the precincts, right, where you have municipal water, it's going through pipes and it's been chlorinated and all that. But at my house on the West Side Road, same aquifer. My well is in my yard. That water is delicious.
You have a well in your house?
Yeah.
I thought that West Side Road. Are you on Birch Hill or West Side?
I'm in on Cedar Creek.
Okay, so that's not. But Birch Hill has that system.
Birch Hill has a system because they built on really, really small lots. And so in order to get that density way back when, they needed a community system because there wasn't enough room for everyone to have a septic and a well.
Okay.
Because everyone has a septic there. There's no sewage there.
Right.
So, and what happened, it went dry. Once Birch Hill got built out, you're talking about 260 homes up there. They couldn't keep up with the water. People wanted to irrigate, and it went dry. There was do not water your grass orders, and people were bringing in water, and so then there was no way for them to build enough wells to meet the demand. So they bored underneath the river. They directionally bored, and there's a pipe, a main that comes from North Conway to the west side for Birch Hill. And Pennachuck Water, who owns and operates that community system, buys their water from North Conway Water Precinct.
No, Chinese. Right? Isn't Pennachuck owned by the Chinese now? Isn't that Nashua? Isn't that Nashua outfit?
Yeah.
Pennachuck is owned by the place in Nashua, right?
Yeah,
Well,
Pennachuck's Nashua.
it was they split it up. It was Pennachuck Water, right? And then they had a subset. They were made by the PUC to keep their accounting, their books separate, right? When they created that Nashua. Now, I don't know if Nashua bought all of them or just the Nashua portion.
Yeah.
I'm not aware. I don't know.
I wanted to ask you about the sewer treatment plant and the interconnect. Was one of the reasons why it took so long to get all that together was because of all the different precincts and all the or was that not a factor?
No, it was totally a factor. Consensus building took years. But once we got Tim Anderson on board, I hope Tim's watching. So the magician, nothing up my sleeve, that's where we digressed. So Pete Preventure leaned over to me and said, there's more capacity. And I said, I know, we're only half of it's on. We only have one raceway on. He goes, no, I mean, the plant's working at a higher capacity than we're permitted for. And I looked at him, and it wasn't the place, but later we followed up on it. So to sweeten the pot, to allow Conway to come into North Conway, Conway paid for the engineering, the re-rating, right? DES has a procedure. This is what you have to do if you want to re-rate your plant. By then, we had operated the plant for some 11 or 12 years, and so we had all this actual data instead of theory. So this was the permitted capacity of the plant, right? And Conway wanted to come in and use up that much. Let's say from the table to here, here's our graphic. And Conway wanted to use, so much. But with the re-rating, was more than what Conway's need was. That's how efficient the system is. So they gained capacity, and then Conway paid a big hookup fee, $3 million, so they were able to retire debt service, so that came off your tax bill. And then they measure the water they're pumping in there, and they charge them that rate, and that reduced your user rate. So it was a win-win. It was, truly a no-brainer. It just took time for people to understand that it wasn't smoke and mirrors, that was for real. And then once we got the plant re-rated and the capacity went up, they knew it was for real.
Do you think the town will function better now that we've got the Conway Village precinct sort of dissolved? Do you think that'll help?
Well, what you
Okay.
saw was a consolidation. Let's just talk fire for a moment, right? You saw a consolidation of fire. Redstone and East Conway are now part of Center Conway, and that made a lot of sense. Conway became part of this town government, and and then there's North Conway.
And that also
Paul-
has
Paul
implication for sewer and water.
Yeah, I mean, it's some point it seems to me, the engineering mind, my Vulcan side.
Right.
It makes sense to me not to have separate precincts any longer. Anyway,
Seems like North Conway, they never want to give up their precinct status.
well, isn't that up to the people of North Conway,
It is, but
right?
I can't imagine in our lifetime.
Well, never say never. Yeah. I've always argued that it isn't going to happen because the town or any one individual wants it to happen. It'll happen when people see that it makes sense in their wallets and pocketbooks. And if we couldn't, I said many times when they were talking about taking or assuming Conway Village, which there was no choice in the matter. When they dissolved their district by statute, it becomes part of the greater municipality. And I always said if we couldn't do it less expensively, then we shouldn't be doing it. And if I followed Andrew Smith, who's now your public works director, he'll be entering his fifth season, I think, in January. There were savings because we have economies to scale. There's a lot of things that were done in duplication. There's a net reduction in staff because we just didn't need. So folks got done because they were retiring, aging out, and just didn't have to replace them and blah blah.
What about the Lower Bartlett? Is that tied in with North Conway too?
So they have contracts they get water from North Conway in one of their regions. So Lower Bartlett is split up into sections. But they are designing right now a sewage collection system and getting off of septic, and they're going to bring that to this plant. And this plant was designed with that in mind. And that's really protecting your aquifer because they are upstream.
I just remember, over my years here, like there used to be debates on who would plow the sidewalks and where in town, and this fire department was gonna, put out fires in the building, and this fire department would handle accidents in the.
That was
in
one of the
driveway.
examples. I mean, if you
it just
if
seemed
you
like
had been in, if you looked at the sidewalks in Conway versus the sidewalks in North Conway, right? And then when we took over sidewalk maintenance in Conway, the quality went up.
I guess what I'm
we
saying
had more
is
resources. you know?
the types of arguments that I would see town hall have and the selectmen have and the precincts have with the town hall, like no other town in probably the universe would have these debates. Like I came from Milford before this, and if they needed the sidewalk plowed, the selectmen would just say, plow that sidewalk, and then it would be plowed. There wasn't all these debates. That must have taken hours, days off your life of arguing.
I heard some pretty interesting arguments, and most of them come from ignorance. Being ignorant, the way I'm using it isn't derogatory. If you look it up in Webster's dictionary, right, it means without the information. And when you get someone who's an orator, statesman, public speaker, and gets up and says with affirmation something, I always saw it as my role to correct the misinformation that person might have just disseminated. Right? I said for years, I quibbed for years, Mark can attest to this, I'm staff, I have no opinion. Here are the facts. Just the facts, please. Dragnet, if you're old enough. And, there were many, many times where I would go toe to toe, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, because you had individuals in the community that were saying things with affirmation as if they were factual, and they were in fact fiction.
I caught the end of the Crow Dickinson era, and I remember him saying like, I'm from this part of town and I don't want to pay for that end of town. And, you know, God bless him. He's a great guy, and he gave me his card when I first arrived and said, I'll answer any question you want. But
Yeah.
you know, it was just interesting how split up and sort of fragmented the town was.
Well, you have to understand, if you go back all those years, Conway is large geographically. It's 80 square miles, you know? It's big for our population. And Crow is in South Conway, right, formerly Goshen. It was a separate township way back when. Bill will fill you all in there in his books, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, when I got here, Gulf Road, you know, there is miles long, and there's 5 mailboxes at the end, right? Big landowners, and Crow was a big landowner, you know, and Thaddeus Thorne, right? Big landowners.
Over in South Conway. This
Yeah,
is South
Conway,
Conway, the
right?
other side of Conway.
So
line.
why would they want to be paying for anything, right? They don't need a sewage treatment plant. But when I got here, the septic truck pulled up to horse feathers twice a day because it was just going into a holding tank, right? Prior to Gary Chandler, the administration in North Conway raised money, publicly raised money and expended that money and put sewage pipes in the ground in North Conway. And there was no plant for them to go to. And they sat there for years like that. You know, you can't make this stuff up, but it's the reality, you know. Now, towns, there's more and more people, right? We're getting closer and closer together, and it's harder to make that argument. You know, I would just as easily make the argument as to why are those public roads out there. I mean, that plow truck's going to go miles,
Right.
and there's, you know, 3 people living out there year round.
Hey, we're actually just about out of our time. You want to either come back, because I want to talk about housing and a couple other things, or you just want to do another half hour? You get it? What's your schedule?
I have time if you want to
You want to do that?
stretch our legs.
Yeah.
Call
Rob,
this
you
one
got,
big.
okay, so what we're going to do, why don't we just wrap it up now, and we'll just do a new one. So, anyway, hold on.
Right.
Okay,
Why don't I visit the restroom?
okay, you can do that. All right, Rob, are we